I'm Dana Schwartz, and this is Rise or Die, the official companion podcast for Peacock's original series, Those About to Die. On this podcast, I go behind the scenes with the show's cast and creators to learn how they brought their brutal vision of Rome to life.
Gosh, people will freak out.
Rise or Die launches on July 18th. Watch or listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Contained herein are the heresies of Radolf Burntwine, erstwhile monk turned traveling medical investigator. Join me as I uncover the blasphemous truth of a plague-ridden world, that ours is not a loving God, and we are not its favored children. The heresies of Radolf Burntwine, coming January 2nd, wherever podcasts are available.
Hi, everyone. Just a few short announcements before we get into the episode. We just did our very first giveaway for the series. We gave away an Angel Case Files book, a Cordelia figurine, and the entire series on DVD. Congrats to all the winners, and follow us on Twitter at AngelOnTopcast to make sure that you are on top of the next giveaway. Did you get it? Also, we have shirts. They're super comfy, the color brings out the blush in your cheeks, and the logo was designed by Kristine Thune, which means that it is a collector's item. You can go to angelontop.com, click the store tab, and find that puppy. Also, if you're a Patreon supporter at the $10 level, there's a discount code to get 20% off. And very exciting, we're going to be recording our first mailbag episode soon, so if you'd like your question to be answered on that special Patreon episode, email us at angelontoppodcast@gmail.com. And even if you aren't a Patreon supporter and you want your question to get answered, and it does, we will send you the episode because we are very thoughtful and kind. And then in personal news, Laura got an exorcism and I got a guitar. So things are looking up.
Hello and welcome back to Angel on Top, the podcast where we watch and discuss every episode of Angel in order, spoiler-free, in tandem with Buffering the Vampire Slayer. I'm Laura Zach.
And I'm Brittany Ashley. And this week we're chatting about Season 1, Episode 6, Sense and Sensitivity. Stick around until the end of this podcast for an original poem written by us through the smoldering eyes of Angel.
I am really happy to be back. I feel like it was the perfect amount of time after we had started this podcast for me to just dip away for a second because it really made me appreciate it. You know, I just really missed being here, and Kristen did such a beautiful job. She was so earnestly engaged as a Cordelia super fan, and I really loved listening on. But I definitely had a little ache, a little longing.
See, I got the best of both worlds because I got to be with Kristen, but now I get to be back with you again.
Oh, I see what you did there. That's well,
it's like an open podcast relationship.
Yeah, it's very poly over here in this verse.
So let's get into maybe one of my favorite eps that we've seen so far of Angel.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. We haven't even had a moment
to connect about
off audio to get a sense of our feelings.
Oh no, this is like my bag.
Okay, but and I think I know you well enough and I know us well enough and our deep pleasure in therapy speak and in talking about therapy and talking about vulnerability and feelings and all of this. But I feel like this episode is anti that. Like this episode is making an argument that all of that makes you weak.
I don't know if I agree that was the takeaway.
We'll get into
it.
I'm just saying it felt like this whole episode and what happens at Kate's precinct feels like a 2018 conservatives hate fantasy of what is happening on liberal college campuses.
Like this is the future liberals want.
Right. Like this is the necessary consequence of having people talk about their feelings and identity politics and trigger warnings and all of these things.
I totally agree with you, but I also think that there was moments of earnestness where the vulnerability actually helped make connections that wouldn't have been made before. I think that perhaps the episode was trying to show that a healthy balance of being vulnerable while also having some boundaries is kind of like the best way to be. That's what it felt like the thesis was.
I hear you, and I'm listening, and I validate your opinion of the episode. I will promise to move forward through this episode open to your perspective.
I would like to gently mirror your sentiment and say that my inner child feels attacked when you disagree with me. However, I do believe that together we will find a balance and grow. Would you care to proceed with this episode?
I'd love to get into an energetic metaphorical sandbox with you and let our and let our inner children play.
I'd like to play with you, Laura.
Thank you. Sense and Sensitivity was written by Tim Minier and directed by James A. Contner. It aired on November 9th, 1999.
And this is the one where Angel fears for Kate's life when her entire precinct is debilitated by sensitivity training. So we open with an action-packed scene where Kate is chasing after David Boreanaz's distant Italian relative. And she's like, "You were supposed to come down to the station and answer questions, remember? Head smash on car door."
Oh, yeah. Kate loves to, well, first of all, visually, this was the parallel of Kate has more in common with Angel than we think. She, too, loves to pursue the perps down shadowy alleyways.
And she likes to go off script.
Totally.
And be rogue.
But she does like her script to be directly relevant to, like, heteronormative gender dynamics.
Totally.
Like, you stood me up. I thought we had a date. Oh, a girl doesn't like to hear that you forgot. You know, like it's all in this very gendered language where Kate is clearly very comfortable with leaning in to what she looks like and how she presents to her benefit. Like she likes to play with the, oh, I'm just a little girl, but I'm tough as fuck, so don't mess with me.
So now we're in the interrogation room and Kate's like, "Tell me what these pictures are." And they're looking for little Tony.
Kapazi?
Little Tony Papazian. And they show us that Kate means fucking business. She's been in there for hours. She has sweat on her brow. Her hair, the little baby hairs are coming out. And she throws them into a forearm chokehold. And her all-male team is like, "Okay, settle down."
Yeah, they're like, doesn't she ever need to take a pee break? We see early on, and this is before we find out that her father is a widely respected cop who's from the same precinct. But we see early on hints that she has the respect of her coworkers. She is one of the only women at her police station. But not only do the men seem to see her as a peer, they also are a little bit like intimidated in some ways by her work ethic or techniques.
And then she's having a moment with her coworker
who has the profile of Jeremy Piven, but it's not him.
kind of like John Lutz and Jeremy Piven. Do you know who John Lutz is? He was on 30 Rock.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And her coworker, John Piven, is like, "Nobody's going to find him. We ain't got nobody on the team that can." And then Kate gets the idea that Angel might be able to. And meanwhile, we see Angel fighting off the tentacles of an octopus demon that I found very triggering. It was a little too over the top for me.
Yeah.
It felt like the weirdest thing that Angel's had to battle this far.
The thing that's the most, more monster than demon.
Right.
Like less sentient than we're used to.
Yeah. It kind of reminded me of, I think it was like in season 2 when there's that like weird like Jabba the Hutt-esque demon or monster that was like in a hot tub of its own liquids. Remember that? It kind of reminded me of that.
Yeah.
It just grossed me out. But Angel stabs a sword into, I guess, the octopi solar plex, and green goo shoots out. Like they borrowed some of Nickelodeon's Double Dare slime. And Cordelia and Doyle show up right as he kills it. And he's basically like, "Okay, thanks. You guys clean it up. Bye."
Well, not just clean it up. Like you guys finish cutting off these limbs and dismembering it and then separately packaging the limbs. sort of like what he did for the doctor,
Right.
Dr. Ron. Is that what his name was?
Yeah, it's all about separating the limbs and putting them in different places.
And Cordelia is not happy with Angel's lack of expressed gratitude and appreciation for the tough work that she and Doyle are expected to do. They're really hitting this sensitivity theme hard early on in this episode to prepare us for what's to come.
And while she's going on and on about how clueless Angel is about this like lack of appreciation, Doyle is in the background getting suffocated by one of the tentacles. But also, in Angel's defense, he's never been a manager before, and so he's still learning how to like manage employees, and he's always just like been on his own, you know what I mean? And so now he has to have like these people skills all of a sudden.
He's the talent. He's the creator, the creative behind this. He doesn't know how to run a team. I think we've seen that play out in Hollywood many times. People who just have a great idea and a great creative impulse get put at the head of like 30 to 100 person teams, and they have no management experience. Not gonna go well. And then we're back at Angel's office. Cordy and Doyle are covered in octopus sludge.
And Cordelia is like, it's possible to brood and show interest in the feelings of others, you know. Doyle kind of breaks it down for Angel and is like, yeah, dude, she thinks you're insensitive.
Also, when Cordelia is trying to avoid talking to Angel about the problem, did you notice that she said something about Jar Jar's getting his own talk show? I don't want to talk about it, which was about Jar Jar Binks, I believe, which I didn't realize that was at the same time as this, but I do remember how much people hated Jar Jar.
Yeah. That hatred still lives on, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it didn't soften with time.
No. But then his cadence totally changes when Kate comes in.
And Kate is really winning the butch off with her wardrobe this episode.
Oh, hell yeah.
I realize she's been a cop the whole time, but there's something about
a cop in everyday clothing.
Oh, or yeah, just her little like cop puffy jacket with like the big belt and the sensible jeans, and you know, sometimes a ring of keys or a gun holster. Like just real, this was real like one of the boys, Kate.
Totally.
Her outfit in this scene alone made me sad that I already wasted my fuck watch pick.
You feel like you wasted it?
No, but I just mean that I already would prefer to pick her this episode than the episode I did pick her for.
I mean, that's the risk we take.
Yeah, it is. Well, more on that later.
So then Kate is showing him pictures of Tony Papazian and also Benny. So immediately when I saw these two dudes, I was like, okay, these guys have played so many Italian mobsters. So I went through IMDb and put together an entire list of the names of all the mobsters that they've played. If I may I please read the names of all the characters that they've played?
Oh, sure.
So Tony Papazian is played by John Capodice, who is also Aguado in Ace Ventura.
This is the second episode in a row you've brought up the Ace Ventura franchise.
It's true. So the names of other characters he's played: Tony Griselli, Sal Viola, Vale Ventresca, Morelli, Limp DeMarco, Caruso, Lieutenant Giordano, Lieutenant El Dente, Bob Bertone, Sal Battaglio, Don Carbone, Uncle Sal, Tony Romano, Frankie Carbonaro, Donnie Diamond, Sal Licati, Lou Guetta, Mr. Tortellino, Federico De Luna, Mr. Cacciatore, Don Piano. So basically it's Frankie, Don, or Sal, and then names involving pasta. But then there's also the guy who played Benny, who is Steve Schirripa, who you may remember from The Sopranos as Bobby. And his names were Paulie Abregano, Federico Libretti, Tony, Vinny, Tony, Anthony, Frankie Barada, Pastor Fanucci, Uncle Frankie, Joey Giordano. Like, what the fuck?
We have a originality crisis in this industry.
It's all involving pasta.
Insanity. Carbonara.
Lieutenant El Dente was my favorite.
Oh, man. That is a tragic
and I
list.
think a close second is Frankie Barada.
It's a really good one. Wow, thank you for doing that work for the benefit of all of us.
I didn't even consider it emotional labor because I enjoyed doing it so much. But basically, Kate wants Angel to track down little Tony, and she doesn't want anyone to know that he's doing it. She doesn't want anyone in her precinct to know. It's basically like a secret freelance gig.
Angel loops in Cordy and Doyle, and he's still trying to adjust his behavior to make Cordelia happy, and you can tell how
hard it is for him to emote.
painstakingly forced it is.
Yeah.
And he also doesn't understand the types of things that Cordelia would like to be acknowledged for, so he's just randomly thanking her for thanks for going through those coroner's reports, because I know that must not be fun. It's clear that they speak different love languages.
100%.
Clearly Cordelia is heavily about verbal affirmation, and I feel like Angel's more an acts of service guy.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like Cordelia is also gifts. She likes to receive gifts.
Right, not necessarily from her employer though. Doyle is probably physical touch, let's be real.
Yeah, I think he needs that very
Yeah.
much. So we're at the police station, and Kate's dad is also a cop. I guess I also really got the sense that this took place in a city like Chicago or something. It didn't. I don't know. Maybe I'm not as well versed in Los Angeles, but it felt like the way that he spoke and the way that he carried himself was like that of a Chicago cop.
Oh, totally, yeah. To your point about Tony Barada, the villains also felt like more of a stereotypical New York or Chicago gangster.
Totally. So he's retiring, and Kate is supposed to say something at his retirement party. And even just in this interaction, they seem to have a very strained relationship.
Yes.
It's almost forced. The only thing that they have in common is the fact that they both work for the LAPD.
Yeah, she's got a tight smile the whole time. You can tell she's very much looking for his validation. I feel like they did a really good job with this scene of establishing the tension very subtly, especially how non-subtle things are going to get later.
So Angel calls Kate because he's found little Tony at the pier. He is staking out and detective angeling. Detective Angel. There's a boat headed towards Tony and Benny, and it's clear that Tony's going to be leaving. And so even though Kate told Angel, yo, if you find him, just call me. Don't do anything stupid. He's like, well, I kind of have to use my instincts on this one and actually interface with him.
Yeah, I mean, look, the boat's approaching. He's about to get on that boat. Clearly, the only thing to do in this situation is to put on a Hawaiian shirt
this
bring out my actor self. We really need Angel the actor. We need actor Angel jingle as well.
I audibly laughed out loud.
Herb Saunders from Baltimore. Isn't this the boat for Catalina?
In his car, he had a spare Hawaiian shirt and a Tommy Bahama fedora that he was just waiting to be Herb Saunders. And he's like, wow, nice day for a ride on the boat, isn't it, fellas? And then all of a sudden, he snaps back into real Angel. He punches them, and then the cops come, and they're like, freeze. And the cops roll up. Even though they got Tony, Kate is really pissed at Angel. And then Tony and Angel make some really serious sexual eye contact. But before that, Kate reams Angel out, and it was just kind of fucking weird.
To be fair, they talked on the phone right before Angel approached these guys, and he only actually stalled them 15 seconds. The boat wasn't even at the dock yet. He really only just had time to throw out a couple quips and then punch the guy out before the cops all swarmed. He didn't really help. He just sort of made it messier.
I guess, but you never know when the cops are going to show up. And so it's what would he do? Wait until the boat has docked and then he goes after them?
And to be fair, given how much they played up.
Wow, we're being so fair.
And to be completely fair, given how much they played up Kate's desire to find this guy in the cold open of the show, she should be ultimately relieved that at whatever cost she found him.
So Tony and Kate have a heated moment where he's being super disgusting, but then she fat shames him.
Yeah, it's
nobody
this
came
nice,
out of that conversation
misogyny versus fat phobia.
And Tony's on the phone with someone that we later learn is from Wolfram and Hart. And he's basically yo, let's kill Kate. And then she calls him fat again. And then there's a call out about Mark Furman, who was the cop in the O.J. Simpson trial, like the super racist cop, that the lawyer's like, we're going to make Kate look worse than that. It's so much problematic shit in that singular moment.
Yeah. They threaten her. They threaten the precinct with a PR nightmare. And it becomes clear that all of this is leading to compulsory sensitivity training for everyone on the crew because of, quote, what Kate did, which is apparently just chokeholding him. I mean, yikes. If that's what was considered unnecessary force in 1999, what a way we have to go.
So Cordelia is asking Angel about the case, and Angel's like, I don't know, it feels very unfinished. And she instantly just gets so irritated. And she's like, your instincts are so sharp when it comes to boring, evil stuff, yet you didn't even notice my shoes. And then Doyle comes in and immediately compliments her on her shoes. And it was a very cute moment. I have to ask, tell me all your thoughts on Doyle in this moment.
Tell me all your thoughts on
Doyle.
Every episode, he's winning me over more and more.
Same.
I mean, I think that's largely thanks to the writers calming down his low-key sexual harassment. I feel like his feelings for Cordy have settled into something a little bit more earnest and quieter. And there are a couple scenes later in particular that I really enjoyed him in. But I also get the sense that there's some ad-libbing. Like whenever I notice beats that I feel like are most likely ad-libbed, it feels like they're usually coming from Glenn Quinn. Between he and Charisma.
Yeah, I'm getting more warm to the fact that it's no longer like harassing Cordelia. It feels more like more just part of their dynamic, or that it's more like a playful, non-aggressive flirtation now.
Yeah, and I do think you're right. I just think it's unfortunate that it ever had to go through that first stage first, because I think the lesson that it imparts potentially is that it really is just about stamina. Like, just keep at it, guys.
Right.
And eventually the woman will see you for the special sunflower you are.
But if anything, if we're looking at it through a different lens, perhaps that the more that Doyle gets to know Cordelia, the more that it's less based on the surface level attraction, and it's more about who Cordelia actually is, that he's starting to, like, that his feelings for her are actually starting to become more genuine.
And maybe to your point, that is conveyed by him noticing the shoes. Like, he's now commenting on things that he actually knows she appreciates. It's not just about him.
He's learning her love language, baby.
Exactly.
So Kate goes to the bar, and everyone's like, great job, Detective Lockley. High five. You're the man. And her dad is sitting by himself, and she approaches him, and he takes a shot, and he isn't very congratulatory. When our friend John Piven approaches Kate and her dad, he gives them a sheet of paper that's like, great, we have this sensitivity training because of what you did to Papazian. And the thing that felt very like 2018 conservative to me was her dad's response, which was, in my day, we didn't need any sensitivity.
Exactly.
And it sounded
then he
like
slips on a MAGA hat.
Yeah, it feels like he was the type of dude that like calls people snowflakes.
Oh, absolutely.
Then we meet Alan Lloyd, and he's basically like the evil Esther Perel of the Angelverse. I love it. So it's like all the cops in the sensitivity training, and Alan is leading the group, you know, basically explaining to them, getting in touch with your feelings will make you better cops. The talking stick, give it a try, Heath. Tell us about your family.
And Brittany, just to pause for a moment, because you know I love when your Esther comes out, but we also just want to make sure that everyone's aware. Of course, our Sicker Sadder World listeners are highly in the know about our hero, our love, Esther Perel, who's a psychologist, writer, relationship and marriage expert who has a podcast called Where Should We Begin?, in which every episode is a different real-life couples therapy session. And we just like to invite her into the room whenever we're talking about anything, honestly. So yeah, just to catch everyone up. So check out that podcast for sure.
So Lloyd is reading Heath, and he's like, perhaps because your brothers were rough with you, you felt like you had to be tough. And then, you had a single mom, so you felt like you had to grow up quickly. And if you could say one thing to your mom, what would it be? And Kate is like the fucking asshole who makes a comment about Heath wanting to
Will
marry
you marry
his mom.
me?
Yeah.
Yeah, she ends up piping up as the one performing toxic masculinity for everyone else in the room. And she reminds me in this moment of, unfortunately, what I think a lot of women who ascended to a certain place of power within their respective male-dominated profession did in order to get to that place, especially in a pre-Sheryl Sandberg lean-in world. I feel like she has modeled her behavior after like looking at who has the power and then just adjusted her behavior to match that behavior without any acknowledgement of the ways that that very behavior is what keeps harmful, damaging systems in place of power. So I think that's why, like, you are seeing, women also be accused in the Me Too movement. And you do see women who are at the top abusing power as well as men, because sometimes it's about like matching your own behavior to that which you think will get you the power.
Alan approaches Kate and he tells her vulnerability makes you uncomfortable. And
hands or the stick?
Oh, I thought you said hands or the stick. Like that's a saying. Like, yeah, hands or the stick.
It is now.
In the first few times that we met Kate, I never got the impression that she was closed off because she was so awkward and babbling, which if anything, it made me feel like Kate was an oversharer. Unless that was part of like the quote unquote role that she was playing when she was undercover at Dobleek.
Yeah, that's really fair. The character that she seems in this scene is very different from what we saw in Lonely Hearts, but that could just be that she's in a different arena of her life. I feel like this whole episode, we've seen her a lot more empowered than we have so far, but it could be that she's coming from that cloaked place of trying to seem strong where she's actually vulnerable, which I think is proven by what happens after this training.
Totally. But again, super into this scene. We're both very into therapy and self-help, so we were in the room basically. And right after the training, Kate apologizes to Angel for the other night, and she invites him to her dad's retirement party and says that it'd be a favor if you were there. I just want someone there who isn't a cop, basically.
And at this point, Angel has come to the office to warn Kate that she may be in physical danger because Doyle's got a guy, and Angel and Doyle went to talk to him. And it turns out, who knew, 1999, there were spinning classes. This guy was, give it to Los Angeles. They're always going to be ahead of the curve on the exercise fads. But this guy heard it in spinning, that someone specifically said that he wanted to take that stupid bitch out, or no stupid bitch is going to get the best of LT. And that kind of...
LT? Lieutenant El Dente?
Oh, wait, or is it LP? Little Tony, LT. Little Tony. We see little hints in this moment where Kate invites Angel to the retirement party that she is already feeling the effects of her deepening vulnerability. She apologizes to Angel, and then when he brings up Tony and says, Tony is trying to kill you, her response is to say, oh, he's really acting out, isn't he?
He must be in some kind of pain to strike out on others like that. She's like, oh, look at me. I'm sounding like Dr. Laura.
Who was a very problematic woman.
She kind of looks like Jill Stein.
Oh, yeah. I can see that. But she was sort of along the lines of a Dr. Oz, Dr. Phil, kind of like pop psychologist who also had a lot of problematic conservative politic behind a lot of her relationship advice.
And then we find out, of course, that Alan Lloyd and the lawyer Papazian was talking to from Wolfram and Hart are in cahoots, and that this isn't just feel-good therapy, it's for some sort of ulterior motive. And then, the hardest scene of all.
We start out with a shot on a gorgeous happy retirement cake.
Beautiful work.
Which I feel like the whole art budget went just to this cake. It was gorgeous. And we see a banner that says Happy Retirement Trevor.
Oh, weird. Trevor Lockley.
Yeah,
Oh, that sounds like a hot guy on a horse.
totally.
Trevor Lockley. Like the name of some guy that you'd fawn over in the Babysitter's Club or something.
Totally. I'm
Yeah,
so happy you
Trevor
said that.
Lockley asked me out.
Brittany, I feel awash with gratitude right now for the fact you just said this amazing thing, and you'll understand why later.
Perfect. So Kate is nervous to say something, and this is where me and Laura had to like rewind a couple times because we didn't get what happened. But
I also feel like we were having very distinct emotional reactions to this scene.
Uh-huh.
And we'll get into that, but you first.
So there's this moment where Angel's trying to make her feel better, and he's like, picture them all in their underwear. And she either says, while I have you, or well, I have you. And it felt like a double entendre to me where she's like, well, I have with you, but also I'm glad you're here. I have you. It was really weird.
But also she was checking him out with her eyes. When he said, you're going to picture everyone in their underwear, she did a little cast down with her eyelids. But regardless of the exact words she said, it's clear that the emotional impact is that picturing him naked is not making her less nervous about public speaking. And then Kate introduces Angel to her father, and Daddy gets a little homophobic up in here.
Ooh, Daddy's homophobic. And he's like, well, I'm glad she's with a man. I always thought she swung another way. So he tries to make like a weird fucking lesbian joke. Ew, dude. But also I never get when dads who have like toxic masculinity, when it makes them uncomfortable that their daughter would be with a woman, because wouldn't they be so defensive against other men all the time that they'd be like,
totally.
It's just, it's a weird thing that doesn't track for me.
Well, and I think sometimes, and of course, like there are no universals in how different parents are going to respond positively or negatively, but it's certainly, I think I've heard of cases where that was the case, where like queer women have an easier time coming out to their more presenting mask energy dads, because the dads are sort of like to your point, like are sort of like, well, that means that I'm going to be the only man in my baby girl's life, and also I don't have to beat anyone up, and also, yeah, I love chicks too, they're hot. You know, like in every way they can get behind it, whereas if they have a gay son, it's harder for them.
Totally.
But no, that's not always the case, and I think maybe with this father, there's a little bit, it's complicated by the fact that we quickly learn that his wife has died and he was a single father for this daughter for a long time. And it could just be that his fear of her being gay could be connected to his fear that she is gay because he raised her wrong, because she didn't have a mother. Like another, false assumption made by people about homosexuality.
Right. Ugh. Kate gives her speech.
This is the scene that we had different visceral reactions to.
Like you laughed and I was like, oh.
I know. I felt bad. I had to stop myself from laughing because it wasn't really a laughing like this is hilarious. It was more I can't believe how uncomfortable this is. And also I can't believe how written by a man this is, was my feeling. So therefore I want to hear your take as someone who has lost your mother about how realistic the words were, because maybe I'm just not used to hearing them so bluntly publicly delivered. And maybe I should sit with the discomfort that the scene made me feel, and maybe that is the point. But anyway, I just want to hear what you felt about it.
I mean, just to backtrack and give the context, she like starts to give this speech about how like you're a great cop, blah, 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 which quickly transitions into you actually forgot how to be anything but a cop for a long time. Obviously, pointing out that he never really tried that hard as a father. She says that after mom died, he couldn't stand the sight of me because it was like seeing her again. But instead of responding with compassion to his daughter, he, was basically like, what's gone is gone. Big girls don't cry, and not letting her process those feelings as a child. And so naturally, she just realized that she had to shove them down because she didn't want to be a burden.
And it sounds, too, like he didn't simply – it wasn't just that he said, what's gone is gone, we have to move on. He also took on this cynical outlook of life. And as she frames it, he said not one word about a better place. It was sort of like once the mother had died, it was all about everything is shit and I'm not going to make you believe that anything will ever be good for you.
Right. Like there's the quote, you couldn't even tell a scared little girl a beautiful lie, which I think that you laughed at.
As a podcast network, our focus is bringing you shows you love to listen to. But we also sell merch related to those shows. And partnering with Shopify has made that both possible and simple for us to do. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. Whether you're selling scented soap or offering outdoor adventures, Shopify helps you sell everywhere because they've got you covered from their all-in-one e-commerce platform to their in-person POS system. What's so fantastic about Shopify is how, no matter how big you want to grow, they provide everything you need to get control of your business so you can take it to the next level. Businesses that grow, grow with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/realm. That's all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/realm now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/realm.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
I mean, come on. That is just, there's
I
too
don't
much
know.
patting oneself on the back in the writer's room for that line, you know?
I suppose so, but it's also like, let's for a minute pretend that Kate is a fully realized character and take these words seriously.
Wow, what a beautiful world. Where have we stumbled upon?
Listen, I'm going to therapy now, like to a really good therapist. I'm working through all the feelings of, how my mom's death affected me because I was 6 years old. And it sounds like she was also very young as well. And there is something to the fact that when your family doesn't talk to you about it or make you feel comfortable to, like that they don't really acknowledge it, that we don't talk about it, it makes you shove it down. And it gives you this complex of like, I have to be like this rock. I connected with the fact that she felt like she had to be tough and grow up very quickly in the way that, nobody was going to treat her age or pad anything for her. And so I was kind of like into that storyline. And, she had to put on this facade of like, being very tough, et cetera, which obviously like made her want to become a cop. I think also to get closer to her dad. Maybe the quote, like male writing maybe comes from a place of the fact that she didn't really have many, like she had her friend's mom who was kind of like a surrogate mother in a way. But other than that, I mean, the only like influences that she had, she's been around like men her whole life. So
Like they can also almost get away with writing it that way.
she never got to be a little girl. She had to instantly be like as tough as her dad was.
But what I meant by the male writing thing is the assumption of what would be important to the female that she didn't get from her dad. Like it being about, you never called me pretty.
Okay, I didn't like that. I didn't like that at all. I wish it would have been like, you never let me cry. Like that
Right.
that would have tracked more for me. But the
things
pretty
more
thing was weird.
Yeah, things more connected to humanity and allowing for feelings and not so specific to like femininity. And I feel like there was an attempt to unpack how daddy issues happen to play out in this particular beautiful tortured woman. And it was sort of like, okay, let's figure out for her, it's that like no one ever called her good and sweet and pretty, and she had to go like to Joanne's mom who smelled like mac and cheese. It was just,
it felt like
such
combining
extreme-
traumas or something.
and just such extreme like gender roles. Like clearly if he was a single father, like he did provide in certain ways, like he did act as both parents, and so clearly they ate in some way. Like I don't know, it just felt like part of the picture while trying to pretend to be the full picture, if that makes sense.
I guess also we have to like keep in mind that she's been holding on to this for like 25 years or something.
Yes, it's
So
been
there's that piece as well.
cumulative injuries that I just didn't buy that in the moment where her defenses are down and she has to say something, that these would necessarily be the things she said. Or maybe I just don't like that that's what she said and I blame it on the writers. But you want to know who loves this speech? Our friend John Piven is just front and center.
Do you hear this breakthrough?
Oh, bring it on, baby. Like, never stop. Yeah. We then, as she finishes the speech, start realizing this may be the angel version of our Band Candy episode, where suddenly everyone appears to be losing their damn minds, and all the formerly stoic, mostly male cops are shouting at each other about catharsis and about you're blocked and what are your issues, and using this emotional speech, but in a way that's coming out like violently.
Right. So everyone kind of like disbands, like her dad leaves and then Angel and Kate leave. And we start with Cordelia, who's irritated that she has to work late at night. And she walks into Angel's office and Kate is like drunk on vulnerability.
She's acting like she's on Molly. She's just like, in Angel's face, like, you have
the most intense eyes.
Like, you're such an old soul, which I wrote true. And then she's like, you don't have an insincere bone in your body. And also, did you notice the part that when Cordelia thought they were alone in the office, she's like, that's what happens. We work for a vamp. And then starts to say vampire and then sees Kate and's like, vamptriloquist.
But during this whole thing, Angel's trying to get out of Kate information about the sensitivity training because he's like, okay, there has to be something that's up. And while he's doing that, he's like, okay, also Doyle and Cordelia, make sure that she never leaves her sight. But then Kate basically calls out Doyle. It's kind of like a weird couples therapy moment where she's like, hey, Cordelia, when you look at Doyle, what do you see?
And Cordy's like, a bad double poly blend. And no, but I really liked when Kate was like, maybe you're just blocked and you should try to open yourself to new possibility. And Doyle's like, hey, I really think she's onto something. She's starting to make sense here. It was really sweet. And Angel has found the information on the sensitivity training, shows up at Alan Lloyd's abode and finds the talking stick bathed in creepy red light. And
it was looking good.
Mm-hmm.
Not going to choose as my fuck watch choice. Which, by the way, are you ready?
Yeah, I am.
Flirting, understanding, consent, and kissing. Flirting, understanding, consent, and kissing. Fuck watch.
So, Laura, since you weren't here last episode, would you please do us the honor of going first?
I'd love to. First of all, if I'm to be completely honest, my truest choice for this episode would be Kate, specifically in her puffy jacket look. But I know we have the rule of you can only pick one person once, which we may need to amend to have like one person per season.
I could do that.
Because I feel like there's so much, at least if Buffy goes to show anything, like the characters grow and change so much season to season that I think it would be fair.
Okay, we can amend that rule.
Okay, so I'm not going to pick Kate. And other than that, I was having a really hard time because this is an episode that mostly takes place at a centered on police officers. So it's just like, for the most part, the only options were like cops and men, and like the types of men that I'm especially not into, which are cops. It's like a snake eating its own tail. I'm really, this is a real last minute choice, and I'm just like really happy that it hit me who mine is. Even while we were speaking today, I didn't have it yet. And so my fuck watch choice is Trevor Lockley from the Babysitters Club. The fictional, handsome equestrian teacher.
What does he look like?
He's got a little bit of like I mean,
swoopy hair.
Yeah, I was about to say Ryder Strong.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a little Ryder Strong. He is definitely toned. Like he's quietly vulnerable. He trains horses as well, which I don't know if you saw that amazing film The Rider that came out this past year.
I must have missed that one.
But it takes a really precise and honestly, I mean, certainly vulnerable and honestly like erotic energy to like be able to connect to wild horses and tame them. And that's why I was so pleased that you invented this character before my very eyes, thanks to the Happy Retirement Trevor banner, because I was at a loss.
Mine was pretty easy.
You have not picked her yet, have you?
No, mine is not Kate.
What?
No. I'd need someone more emotionally available than Kate.
But she was emotionally available for most of this episode. That was the whole thing that it was about.
Yeah, but it all came out it was all so much.
You don't want someone who's only emotional available after they've been drinking. You want someone who can access it at any time.
Absolutely. I need there to be like a calm balance to it. I saw a ton of potential in Herb Saunders. He was like adventurous. He had like this vibe where he's like always on vacation. He was friendly, communicative. And, you know, he only lasted for a few seconds, but
he knows how to take a shitty situation and find the light and humor in it.
Yeah, and he's also a planner. He knew that, you know, the boat comes every 2 hours.
He's a man who's not afraid to ask for directions.
Flirting, understanding, consent, and kissing. Flirting, understanding, consent, and kissing. Fuck watch.
Whew, yeah. Good.
Whew. All right.
Good morning, Baltimore.
Good for all of us.
So
let's be honest. I'm really just want Trevor for his horse, but it's fine.
So Kate is with Doyle and Cordelia still, and obviously their mission is to keep her contained. But she starts to get really emotional about her dad, and all of a sudden,
her daddy.
Oh, her daddy. And she takes out her gun and is like waving it around and is like, I don't mean to sound dramatic, but I will kill you if you try and stop me.
Because I need to find my daddy now.
Yeah.
I think that Elizabeth Rome, the actress that plays Kate, did a phenomenal job in this episode.
Yeah, I know
mean,
that she really had to access a lot of emotions. She had to have some range. I think that Angel perhaps also, I mean, David Boreanaz also had some pretty sick range.
I know that it's not necessarily that hard to act as someone out of their normal mind. Like sometimes it's easier to act that way than to like be purely naturalistic. But I do think that she did a really good job in this kind of like MDMA hyper vulnerable state. Like this scene in particular I thought was really funny.
There's also something thematic about Kate accessing this like infantilized version of herself, which, you know, it kind of made me feel like perhaps being arrested back to when her mom died and not being able to progress forward in like a natural way. I don't know. There's something very like childlike about what she was performing. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Like she had to grow up too fast. And then when forced back in this state, she goes back to the place where she never got to grow from.
Yeah.
I don't want to make anything black and white or about a single issue, but it may be a contributing factor to why she is not partnered and why she has trouble finding love. She's got a lot going on between the impact of her two parents alone.
So Alan Lloyd and Angel are having it out, and he's like, you have rage. And he's peddling his old anger is just fear motto. And he asks Angel what his parents were like, and Angel gives a stupid fucking answer. My parents tasted just like chicken.
Did Angel kill his own parents? Do we know that, Angelus?
Yeah, he brutally massacred his own family, whose blood he later described as the sweetest of all. Which also, it's like, I guess you make jokes about something super traumatic.
Yeah, at least before your personal transformation. into someone who accesses your true feelings about things, which we are about to see happens to him too. He is not.
Yeah, unfortunately, he touches the talking stick.
Yep, and his soul counts as being vulnerable to this dark magic.
Yeah, I'm always like unclear if he's still susceptible to the like curses that humans are. You know what I mean? I always wonder if it'll just be like a trick and he's actually not susceptible to the same things.
I didn't think he would pretend just for Cordelia and Doyle's sake, because the first moment we realize that he's under the influence is when he says, sounds like somebody needs a hug.
Right.
And it's a little bit, be careful what you wish for, Cordelia, because now you're going to get the extreme of what you wanted at the beginning of the episode. And this scene where we go into the chaos of the precinct is what I'm talking about, or what I was talking about at the beginning of the episode, of this honestly being like what conservatives think will happen if you create a culture that is about sensitivity and sensitivity to feelings and trigger warnings. It feels like it's associating vulnerability and being in touch with your emotions with weakness and inefficiency, and not
only
being...
if they read Brene Brown, they know that vulnerability
I
is
was
strength.
literally about to say, clearly no one in this office or in this writer's room has read Brene Brown.
And has not dared greatly.
Power of Vulnerability. To be fair, this was still at least 2 decades before her first book came out, but still there were probably plenty of other therapists saying similar things. But Brene, love you, girl. Oh, Brene and Esther.
So Tony Papazian clearly knew what he was doing, that the sensitivity training was going to make the cops basically not do their jobs. And so Heath, the cop with the single mom and like the tough brothers, realizes that jailing people is actually making them more violent than when they came in, which also I don't know if I believe is necessarily true, but whatever. But he essentially lets out all the inmates, including Papazian, and he's like, remember this, brothers, an act of kindness is just as manly as, and then he gets jumped.
And this is exactly what I mean. This micro example is what I mean by like, this is what certain people would leverage as what they think liberals want to do. Like they think liberal people or liberal-minded people want to go into prisons and be like, oh, it's about kindness. Be free, everyone, and hold hands with, like, rather than examining larger systemic oppressions that like lead to inequality in who's getting jailed and who has the opportunities to avoid such. And like,
it was like a caricature of vulnerability.
Right. It's like it's devoid of nuance, and it's like the extreme. Which I understand sometimes when you're trying to do something archetypal in like a work of writing. Fair enough.
What they should really watch is this beautiful documentary called The Mask You Live In. And it's all about how toxic masculinity is at the root of pretty much like all violence.
Yeah. I mean, let's look at pretty much what like percentage of mass shootings is connected. And also like the correlation of domestic violence with people who end up committing larger atrocities against more groups of people.
And they actually, in that documentary, there's a whole segment of that interviews inmates.
Mm-hmm. I recall.
Oh, you've seen?
Oh, I have.
Oh my God. So yes, Angel is affected, and he says something to Doyle and Cordelia that really made me laugh. He was like, you both withdraw when I go vamp. I feel that you judge me. Closeness is too important to me right now.
And then Cordelia's like, we're not going to judge you. It's fine. Just do your thing.
They're realizing that the downside to Angel being this kind of like touchy-feely version of himself means that he won't be as alert, you know, as good of a fighter if he's this way.
And he's also starting to compliment his friends. So he says to Cordelia, do you have any idea how precious you are?
Ugh. And then Doyle's like, lay off, dude. And so basically Doyle and Cordelia kind of like have to handle this. And then a super weird thing happens that I was not into, which was Kate's colleague, our friend John Piven. He's acting out because he has a thing for her. And the language that he uses is like, you taunt me with your smell. dude, she doesn't fucking belong to you. Like, she has agency and is her own person. She doesn't just exist for you to, like, quote unquote, like, torture you with her existence.
You want to know what that reminds me of?
The patriarchy!
And then Tony and the other inmates find the stash of assault rifles, and he's on a mission to murder Kate. And Angel and Cordelia, they break into the police station, and they're having a hard time getting Angel to snap into his regular self.
Can I ask a question?
100%.
What gives with it being so specific for Tony about Kate? Like, is it just at this point resentment? Just the grudge of it all that she's been so fixated on him? Does it have to do with her legacy and maybe something that her father had done? It just felt so specific to her, like as if the rest of her squad would not be able to take him down otherwise.
Yeah, it reminded me of perhaps like a long-standing manhunt for him that she was leading. It was like he's the criminal that always gets away. It kind of gave me that vibe. And also, I'm not going to make this gendered, but maybe it has to do with the fact that she's a woman and she was able to, quote unquote, beat him.
I'm not going to make this gendered, but maybe it's because she's a woman.
I mean,
and a hot woman, a woman that he would find.
Yeah, he
hot,
called her like a bitch like 3 times. Like, that was obvious. Like, he tried to objectify her while also, calling her a bitch.
He's already used multiple other techniques to demean and disrespect her and make her feel less than. But what do we feel about the fact that this is the second consecutive episode where one of our main female characters gets called a bitch and has to deal with that in her own way? And of course, we saw Cordelia own the title in last week's episode, Room with a View. But here we see Kate spin it as, I'm not a bitch, I'm just protected. These are just my walls I have up.
Little Tony is about to shoot Kate, and Angel steps in, and he's like, I'm feeling some serious negative energy in this room. Your body language is so closed. Both somehow Angel and Kate like kick into gear.
Yeah, this was the one moment that I felt disproved the unsavory theory that the episode seemed at first to be laying out, which was that vulnerability and power and strength are mutually exclusive. Like, here's where they coexisted a little bit.
Right.
And it was showing too, it kind of reminded me weirdly of like Xander's through line of always being able to access his military skills after that one episode where
the Halloween episode.
Yeah, the Halloween episode where he embodied like an army dude. And
God, I really appreciate that we have this shared language with each other.
It's really lovely. And even though he's outside of that mindset now and like in many other ways is no longer that character, he still can access those skills. It kind of felt like that's what was happening here. Like, these characters, it's muscle memory a little bit. Like, they still, the being aware of what's going on emotionally doesn't change the fact that they also have this training, this physical training and impulse to stop evil doing.
And somehow Angel was also able to restrain himself to not going into vamp face. Because you know how he usually goes into vamp face when he's fighting? He like had to restrain himself because obviously nobody in the precinct can know that he was a vampire.
Oh, that's so interesting. So he has the capacity to. I wasn't sure if that was connected to the fact that he was more self-conscious about being vampy and the fact that he was more connected to his
I think maybe
feelings.
that's how they justified it.
Right.
But then Angel hits little Tony in the stomach like 8 times. And, okay, never mind. Wait, this was the most cringy line. You could be a rainbow, not a painbow.
Womp. Womp. David Boreanaz had to say that with a straight face.
Then Kate and Angel hug it out. And Kate says, some people just really need to live in the problem.
So many good one-liners this episode.
They're really incredible.
Like, a lot of terrible ones, a lot of really good ones.
Little Tony calls Wolfram and Hart as like his phone call. And basically they tell him that he tried to kill a cop in plain view and that he's too much of a liability to take on as a client. And the lawyer mentions that there's more pressing issues at hand, and we see Angel on the surveillance camera. But it was also interesting to hear that, like, at this point, we don't really know a ton about Wolfram and Hart, so it's interesting to learn what their boundaries are, that they kind of want to remain under the radar in a way.
And we're meant to take from that moment that Angel is now enemy number one of Wolfram and Hart, correct?
Mhm.
It's the morning after at the police station. Everyone has an emotional hangover, and Kate apologizes to Angel for what she said the night before, and then has a little awkward moment of like, I didn't say anything to you, like implying that I think she was worried she may have said something romantic or had come on to Angel. And they really didn't go that direction when they were in that state. And that says to me that those emotions are not yet potent enough. Like, they're not yet their guiding emotional principles yet. Like, those were not the priorities in the state.
And also, Kate says that someone must have spiked the punch at the retirement party because, again, she would never really believe that the talking stick was cursed or that there was some sort of supernatural element. So they were also kind of Mulder and Scullying them, if you will. Does that make sense?
Wait, say one more time the first part.
Which is that one of them has like a very like logistical, more like quote unquote like fact-based approach to things, whereas the other is like, it's supernatural.
Oh yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
you could say
having
that.
never seen an episode, I was able to make an X-File reference.
And also the complete lack of progress in their romantic journey would also be very Mulder and Scully.
So then maybe perhaps the most heartbreaking moment, which is that
ouchie
Trevor Lockley, Kate's dad.
No. Okay, yeah. Trevor Lockley,
Kate's dad comes in and he's like, I got your voicemail messages. And we think that it's going to be like a nice, touching speech, but instead he's like, you made me look like an idiot in front of the guys. We never speak of this again. And you see everything drained away from Kate's face. And an Angel like looks back to her, has sympathy. And it kind of reminds me of the same linger that he had on Buffy in what I believe was in Becoming Part 1 or Part 2, where Whistler is showing Angel Buffy when she's in her bathroom crying because her parents are fighting. And it's just seeing them kind of in their own like trauma, basically, and having sympathy for them.
Yeah, her dad basically says, as far as I'm concerned, it didn't happen, which from what we've seen of what hurts Kate the most is the worst possible thing he could say, because he's essentially pretending as if nothing's wrong and pretending as if something didn't happen, which would be more cruel than hashing it out and being honest with her and leaning into what the very real problems are about their dynamic that she addressed. So it's him having an opportunity to make a different choice, but making the same choice as he always has, and her slipping back into that unhealthy dynamic she has with him that she always has had.
It's a bummer. And perhaps it's because he didn't use the talking stick at all. I think it would have been a completely different episode had he done that. So he wasn't able to go on any like emotional journey whatsoever. He was just staying in kind of like his stoic, normal self.
Rough. And she viscerally felt that.
Yeah.
Like, she really did just wilt.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Angel on Top. I am Brittany Ashley, and when I am not recording or editing this podcast, I'm editing more podcasts. I live in podcasts. I also write, and you can find all my stuff at BrittanyAshleyFunny.com.
And I am Laura Zach. You can find me podcasting with Brittany Ashley elsewhere. You can also find me on the internet and all the social media places. And still working on that website.
This podcast is going to be your journey through finally learning
I
Squarespace.
promise it will be before the end of season 1, hopefully in the next 2 episodes.
And you can follow Angel on Top on Instagram and Twitter at Angel on Topcast. You can email us at angelontoppodcast@gmail.com should you have a query or perhaps a compliment.
You can also support us on Patreon at patreon.com/angelontop. We have a sick shirt you can buy if you go to angelontop.com and click the store tab. And if you give at the $10 level on Patreon, you get 20% off that shirt and off of future items that we're going to be adding. You can also leave us a review on iTunes, especially if it's nice.
Ooh, weird. We'll be back in 2 weeks. And in the meantime, listen to Buffering the Vampire Slayer as we are a never-ending sandwich of episodes.
And now, please enjoy an original poem written by me and Brittany from the point of view of our beloved angel.
Sense and sensitivity. My work night's complete, with sewer mollusks subdued, but the team wants more than my kill. They expect gratitude. While in another dark alley, stoic cop seeks validation by mimicking same abuses that entrap her in her station. The day patriarch's retiring, excessive force is requiring, class of compulsory sharing of hardened souls bearing. A weakened Kate asks me to witness her dad canonized. Their dynamics so brutal, glad I committed patricide. This rough, tough detective was just a child, neglected. Her vulnerability stigmatized, teardrops from blue eyes. Though cathartic, I'm certain, her breakthrough was eerie. She's drunk on emotions, can't even answer my queries. Tracked down the psychocologist, found his occult talking stick, but one touch made me feely. To Cordy, I'll be more sweetly. My comrades want me to go vamp, but I feel triggered by that. The negative energy in this room ignites my aggressive fumes. With little Tony behind bars, thought Kate be elated. But harsh words from a father can make a little girl deflated.
Hi, I'm Dana Schwartz, and this is Rise or Die, the official companion podcast for Peacock's original series, Those About to Die. On this podcast, I go behind the scenes with the show's cast and creators to learn how they brought their brutal vision of Rome to life. I talked to acclaimed director and executive producer Roland Emmerich.
When I saw the first race, I was like giddy.
Actor Ewan Ryan.
For an actor, that's a dream, although you do get a lot of sand in your sandals.
And so many more.
You helped summon those ghosts back onto that stage.
Every day when I went to set, I was giggling about what I saw.
I think it's going to be a breathtaking thing.
People will freak out.
Rise or Die launches on July 18th. Watch or listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Nowadays, trends and news cycles change faster than we can blink. But there are some things that withstand the test of time. And if you're looking for a connection to something timeless, and maybe also a glimpse of life at a slower pace, I believe everyone can relate to the very human experiences explored in Jane Austen's novels. And that's where I come in. My name is Alison Larkin. I'm a writer, comedian, and narrator and host of the Jane Austen podcast with Alison Larkin. I spent a lot of my childhood in the part of England where Jane Austen lived and wrote, and now that I live in the States, nothing gives me a sense of homecoming quite like narrating her books. On this show, you'll listen to award-winning narration. I'll give myself a pat on the back for that. As well as conversations with actors, writers, and other fascinating people who all share a passionate love for Jane Austen. So please, join me as we embark on a wonderful journey through Jane Austen's work. Be sure to listen and subscribe to the Jane Austen podcast with Alison Larkin, wherever you get your podcasts.